Hello, welcome to the Roscoe Palm Show. First time back in a long time. I hope you missed me. And I'm here with my friend Nantel Hopley. Nantel, it's been a while since we've had an on mic conversation for the people.
Yeah, I don't like talking on podcasts anymore. I just like to do the behind the scenes. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about something. You know, Nantel, like we usually, when we have water for our guests, what we usually do is we take the labels off because we don't want free advertising. I mean, some of these clips reach like up to hundreds of thousands of people. So we end up with a situation like this. But today is a very special episode because I'm here with my good friend, Erika Bornman. How are you doing, Erika?
I was doing fine until a minute ago when you shoved that water in my face.
So, yeah, the thing about this, I remember you told me the story, and we had a meeting once, and I got this Aquelle water. Aquelle. So sorry.
No, it's fine.
And you completely excoriated me, and I was so ashamed because, as you said, this water is the commercial operation of what you say is an abusive cult.
Yeah, it's just one of their commercial operations. They're a very industrious bunch, those missionaries. Yes, it's owned by Kwasizabantu, and all its profits go to Kwasizabantu, which is a mission station, and they supposedly do good with that money. It's just very hard to find evidence of the good that they do, especially if you also look at the way that they treat their workers.
So I'm gonna put this away.
Thank you. On the floor.
Yeah, I'm
gonna
put that away. And so tell me in plain and simple terms, like why you want me to put that water away. What personal experience have you had in a nutshell about why Aquelle should be boycotted?
My issue isn't with the water. My issue is with the people who own the water and the people who profit off the sales of the water. So actually, yes, my issue is also with the water because it's all tainted. They believe that you have to break the spirit of a child by the age of 3 in order to get that child into heaven.
Kwasizabantu. And the meaning of Kwasizabantu?
The place where people are helped.
The people are helped.
Yeah, it's actually the place where they help themselves to people, but anyway, yeah.
So, explain that to me. It's in your view, and you've written a book about this with Penguin Books called Mission of Malice. Tell me about the malicious nature that you've experienced in Kwasizabantu.
So to give a little bit of history, Kwasizabantu was started in the late 1960s, early 70s by a German South African called Erika. And he apparently brought revival to the Zulus. And he spoke fluent Zulu, and that's, it's always impressive when a white person in South Africa can speak an African language.
That's why we like Lance Klusener so much.
So many of us just don't bother because, that superiority complex is there. But he spoke fluent Zulu, fluent German, fluent Afrikaans, fluent English. And he established this so-called mission station. And I remember we were still in apartheid days. And so a supposedly multiracial society brought scrutiny from the apartheid government, of course. And Kwasizabantu neatly circumvented that scrutiny. And according to people who actually helped this at the time, they started supporting the apartheid security police in handing over and reporting ANC and UDF cadres. Now, how they were able to do this is one of the basic tenets of their belief system is that you have to confess every single sin. And unless you've confessed it to a human being who is, ordained by God, certainly no human institution to hear your confession and intercede on your behalf. Only then does God forgive you. So you can live the most exemplary life, but you get angry and you go to bed without confessing that one sin. And if God takes you that night, which they often threaten happens all the time, then you go straight to hell. So you cannot become a member of Kwasizabantu unless you confess all your sins and you go back to your childhood and you remember as many sins as possible. So cadres and all their family members would come and they would find the Lord in one of these sermons and then obviously have to start confessing, and they would confess things. And according to the whistleblower who actually wrote a report for the TRC Commission about this, Kwasizabantu would then use this these confessions, which sometimes included information of arms caches and that, and they would then hand that over. And one of their handlers, interestingly enough, was Colonel Toby Vermaak, who, if you Google him, he was one of the guys who de Klerk let go, I think it was in 1991, when he let go a number of these really problematic ones. Apparently, Toby Vermaak's one thing that he concentrated on was misinformation. And if you, Google him, interesting guy. Toby Vermaak is now the head of security at Kwasizabantu.
The crux of that is that it was set up to civilize the natives. They beat children, and they collaborated with the apartheid regime. There's a very interesting slide in your book, Mission of Malice, My Exodus from Kwasizabantu, where you can see Elo Stegen leads the apartheid government ministers, law and order, Adrian Vlok, on a tour in the late 1980s.
Yeah, he would come in on his military plane.
You would see this.
Yeah. He would come visit, and I mean, look at the flowers in his lapel. He was treated like an absolute VIP. And we had to line the street. I was a child then. We had to line the street and wave at his car as he drove by. He was treated like, royalty. As was Mangasutu Buthelezi, and the royal king Zwelithini at the time. So they've pivoted, of course, now, and they have the support of the current government. But nobody has ever done an investigation into their collusion and their crimes.
So you mentioned that this came up in the TRC and nothing has happened.
I don't know if it ever came up in the TRC. I know that this person who collaborated, who was at Kwasizabantu, he's actually on the far end of that photo, Koos Greef, and he wrote the whole report for the TRC. But as far as I know, the TRC never took action.
And that's the political footprint of it. But you're here because you're my friend. And I want to talk to you about your personal journey through this. The cover of this book is you as a child, and you were in the mission at that time. What are your earliest memories of this community and your passage into this, as you put it, into this cult?
Well, my earliest memories are pretty good, except for those long services where you had to sit on these really uncomfortable chairs. But it's, Afrikaans we say op die oog af. When you're just looking at it, it presents itself as a very benign, lovely society. And what you don't see is the way that they control people. If you're older and wiser and not a child, maybe you will see signs of this coercive control that they exert, but they are extremely intelligent in how they present themselves to the world.
I'm still not convinced, but in our conversation, our telling, if I was to sit in judgment of Kwasizabantu, I'm not convinced now that it is, as you put it, a cult. It just sounds like a very boring church with like very uncomfortable benches, which is pretty much the aggregate of any sort of Sunday Christian experience. So what experiences did you say they beat children? I mean, I'm going to be frank. Were you beaten? Why were you beaten? How were you beaten?
Yeah, I was beaten, but fortunately not in public the way that they did many. I was still protected by my white skin. My Zulu peers had it the worst.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, okay. So in 1986, towards the end of 1986, they decided to start a school, and it was going to be a multiracial school. And they asked my father, who was a teacher, if he would come and be the principal there. Now, we had been part of Kwasizabantu for a number of years by then, and my siblings and I had a stint of about a year of staying there without our parents when they went to France. So that was terrifying because of the way that they treat children. But if we're speaking, and we would witness public beatings. If a child did something wrong, they would beat that child very often in front of other children. And you have to sit there and you have to watch it. And even if it's your friend, you can't empathize, because then you are showing that you're one with a sinner. And the other way that they control you is by telling you that if you know of a friend's sin and you don't confess it, you are as guilty as them and you will suffer the same punishment and fate as them. So they encourage you to basically snitch. The snitching culture is huge there, because if kind of the race is on, like who's going to tell on who first, you know, when something happens. So having trust in your friends is very difficult, because the Lord might speak to them in 2 weeks, and then they feel it on their hearts. Oh, all these phrases. They feel it on their hearts to confess, and then you're in trouble because you haven't confessed. So that's how they control, you know, like they but when somebody does step out of line, or this used to happen, they would call the meeting. But before I get to the beatings, let me talk to you about something that happened when I was around 9-10 years old. And this young girl, she was 2 years younger than me, and somebody had seen her take some sweets out of another girl's suitcase. And of course, they went and told on her. And we were all called into the upper room, which it sounds benign, doesn't it? And there she was, and I'm going to name her accuser, Jenny Christmas, who is still there. And she said to my friend, so in the Bible, they say that you have to cut off the hand of a thief. So she sent David Jatka, who was another co-worker, to go and fetch a knife, and he returned with a big butcher knife. And then she gave my friend a choice, like, do we cut off your hand or do we beat you? And they obviously didn't cut off her hand. But the scary thing is that I would not have questioned their right to cut off her hand, because already by then I was so indoctrinated that everything they do and everything they say is God's will. And then a few years later at the school, they got the permission of the parents to beat the children. So they basically called the parents in, who at the time were mainly members of the congregation and 99% Zulu. And they said, if your child transgresses, please tell us how you would like us to treat your child. And the parents said, well, give them a hiding, you know. But these turned into proper beatings. And I, as a white child, didn't witness all the beatings, but I did witness some of them. Sometimes I recall we were told the white children can leave this meeting now. And we left. And of course, then didn't witness what was happening. And what would happen is they would recall someone's confession that they had confessed to a counselor. Your confession is meant to be between your counselor and God and you. But nobody ever blinked an eye that these confessions were then openly discussed in meetings. And this child would be called up. And in the very beginning days, they would strip this child and beat them. Sometimes with their knickers on or their underpants on, and sometimes not. I never witnessed that. That happened only with the Zulu children. They would beat these children. Often one adult would hold down their arms, the other adult would hold down their legs, and the third adult. And very often it was Michael Ngubane, who is still a leader at Kwasizabantu, which is why I'm naming his name. And until recently, he was a board member of Aquelle, and a board member, he might still be a board member of the very school of the children he abused. But he would rain down blows on this child.
Fisted blows?
No, using a plumber's pipe, a plumbing pipe. And very often this plumbing pipe would be filled with sand to make it heavier.
How old were these kids, generally the range of?
Age 5 to matric.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what were these infractions? These were infractions against what the book of Leviticus says?
No, well, they could have just looked at a teacher. Sometimes they were beaten because they laughed at a teacher. Once they were beaten because the teachers had played against the children and the children had won a sports match. The children's team had won and they celebrated, and that was seen as rebellion, so they all got beaten for winning a sports match. It could be as simple as writing a note to a boy or a girl that you liked them. Boys and girls are not allowed to talk outside of a gathering like the school or the church or whatever. If you were accused of having a relationship with somebody, the consequences were dire. So they expelled a lot of children in those early days, but before they expelled you, they would first beat you. My friend Kwasizabantu was 15 years old when she accepted a chocolate from a colleague of her father's, a man who worked with her father's. And she was seen taking this chocolate, accepting this chocolate, and she was called in and told that they know that she's having a relationship with this man. And then she said, but I'm not, call him in, let's ask him, and then now she was insolent. Anyway, they called her parents and made her father beat her in front of the school co-workers and that. And then they kicked her out wearing only the clothes she was wearing. And as she was now with these welts on her back and her buttock and her thighs and her legs, she had these red welts from the way she'd been beaten. Her father's car was coming up the road and she thought, he's going to stop and he's going to let me in. And he carried on driving. And so she sat in the shade at a nearby little shop. And then when night fell, some kind Samaritan said to her, come sleep here in our house. And many years later, Kwasizabantu went back and spoke to this very same Michael Ngubane and others. And said, and they acknowledged that they had unfairly dismissed her and expelled her from school. Now, by that time, her parents had also left Kwasizabantu. There'd been a rift between the main Kwasizabantu church and the one at Tugela Ferry or Msinga, and her parents were part of the rift. And she said to them, please, will you just tell my dad that? Please just tell my parents that. And they were like, no, they've left. We've got nothing to say to them. So when they say they want to reconcile, it's on their terms. They don't want to reconcile with us. They want to silence us. But these beatings Roscoe, there was one boy, I think he was 10 years old, Bongani. He's now in his 40s. And when he was around 10 years old, he asked his friend, who created God? Right? So his friend reported him. And Michael beat him around 35 lashes. And a few days later, he was playing with matches. So now he needed to get beaten again. But his bottom was so raw that the co-worker who beat him for playing with matches beat him under the soles of his feet instead. 10-year-old boy who created God and playing with matches. Right? So my Zulu friends and peers from that time walk around with physical scars on their bodies. There are reports that some of them got given as many as 70 lashes. And when all this came out in the media in 2020, there were actually reporters who wouldn't report that. They said it sounds like, that sounds impossible. How can you beat a child 70 lashes with a plumbing pipe? But it happened, you know. Yeah.
And that gives me, the story of the father driving past their own child, you know. It raises the question, how is the society of Kwasizabantu structured? What are the tenets? What do they believe? And what is the power structure of what you would call, as you put it, a cult? How did they organize?
When Alo Stegen was still alive, he thankfully is no longer walking this earth. The earth is better without him, honestly, a better place. Some people should die. I am not a subscriber to don't speak ill of the dead. If they deserve to be spoken ill of, then why would we whitewash what they did when they were alive? So he was definitely the main guy. And then there was a hierarchy of what they call co-workers under him. And then the hierarchy went down until you got to people who were just workers and not part of any kind of hierarchy at all. And so it's these co-workers that you confessed your sins to. They like to say that other Christians have the Bible, we have the Bible and the revival. So in other words, God has told them more, has revealed to them more than what is in the Bible of how they should live.
It's one of the hallmarks of a cult. We have this extra little secret source.
We are the only ones with the whole truth.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's us against them. They also controlled us by not allowing television, magazines, books of the world. Everything had to be vetted. No music with a beat in it was allowed. Once the school children put on a play, I think it was around 1988 or 87, and the whole school started clapping rhythmically to the music, well, they all got beaten. But they first had to sit in that hall on the floor for hours. So the little children started wetting their pants. So no music with a beat in it. And people say, oh, that was so long ago. But I ask you this, go visit and you will see all the Zulu children and all the Zulu men and all the unmarried Zulu women shave their heads short. There are no braids. You will not see a pretty hairstyle. The married women wear something to cover their heads. So I don't know whether they are allowed a hairstyle. But of course, the white kids could do what they wanted with their hair. I remember one very awful perm. I once posted the photo on Facebook and everybody laughed at me because it was truly awful. But the point is that I was allowed to do with my hair what I wanted. But the black kids had to conform to a certain hairstyle, and they would be forced to. It would get shaven for them if they allowed it to grow just a little bit too much. And lately, Kwasizabantu have been saying, oh no, it's their choice. They choose to do this. yeah, does that not show you that you are controlling their minds if this is what they choose? So Stephen Hassan, he's an international cult expert, and he has this BITE model, which is control of behavior, control of information, control of thoughts, and control of emotions. And Kwasizabantu pretty much fits that bill. And then, of course, there are many other cult experts. We're lucky in this day and age that there are so many amazing experts. Dr. Janja Lalich is a good example of that. And she has written a book called Bounded Choice, where it is your choice, but you're bounded. So it's not really your choice because you are being controlled. You know what you're supposed to do. So even when it comes to marriage, Elo would call you in. I was called in 3 times in this fashion. The first time,
the leader of this cult.
The first time I had just finished writing matric, and he would sit you down and pray with you because nothing can happen without a prayer. I mean, you get into the car and you pray that God, please protect us on this journey. And it sounds wonderful, right? But yeah, it's another form of control. And Allah would sit you down and say, so this guy, and isn't he lucky that I'm not saying his name in public? He's still a member there with a family. Anyway, this guy feels that God wants him to marry you. Now, I've been indoctrinated that women are nothing. To this day, the way that they talk about women and girls is highly, highly problematic. They teach you that you are nothing. You are there to serve men. Your role is as a helpmeet. And yes, there are women in leadership positions, but they are just foot soldiers of this patriarchy. They are willing participants. So yeah, they may have a little bit of power, and boy, do they wield it. And now suddenly here's this man that I've been taught knows more and is closer to God than I am. He wants to marry you. Please go and pray about it and come and tell me your answer. So I went back and I said, my answer is no. I don't know where I got the courage from. I've always had this streak in me. But let's say that I had said yes. What would then happen is at a church service, our engagement would be announced. Elo or one of the others would stand between the two of us and actually put the engagement ring on my finger. So not even the guy that I'm going to marry was allowed to, we're not allowed to touch, we're not allowed to talk to each other, we're not allowed to be alone in a room together. The first time that we would be alone in a room together would be after we were married. We also have had no sex education, except on the night of our marriage, Elo would call each of us in individually and give us a 2-minute little spiel. I've asked people who went through that to tell me what were they told. Can I go there?
Yes,
can I tell
let's go there. The guy has got a right of reply, but if you're so close to God, he would be appearing in the chair right now.
No, absolutely. Kan jy ons hoor, Oom Erle? He's dead now. Anyway, but my friend told me that he was told, look, at first you might have a little bit of difficulty finding the hole, but don't worry, you'll get there. And then he was told when a woman is at her most fertile, and he said, if you don't want children, then put a towel next to her and ejaculate on the towel.
On the towel?
Yeah. And that was the extent of his sex education. Okay? So he was told nothing about her needs. Like I said, was there nothing mentioned about get her turned on, lubrication, nothing. Nothing.
No, but sex is not for pleasure.
No. It's
for procreation.
It's for procreation,
for
but
power.
Also a woman has to submit whenever her husband wants it. And I call that marital rape.
Lots of people call that marital rape.
Yeah. So he later asked his wife what she was told in her 1 minute with Elo. And she was basically just told that whenever your husband wants it, submit. Boom. That was it. So, I've gone off on a tangent. Where were we?
We're on this journey. We're getting it.
So they are now, so with all these allegations coming out, and it's not as if we haven't tried. Over the past 3.5 decades, lots of people have tried. First, a lot of people have tried to speak to Elo and his leadership. to try and get them to change these very legalistic ways so women, for example, aren't allowed to wear makeup. This shirt might be acceptable. Yeah, I'm not showing too much cleavage, but no makeup, no jewelry except for wedding rings and watches. Very, very modest clothing, no jeans. When I was there, we weren't even allowed to wear T-shirts that had anyone's logo on it. Modesty is absolutely required, and you're taught to want that. You're taught to not want to stand out. Like, you get put in your place very quickly. So that's one of the many laws. Then obviously the music with no beat in it, the whole confession thing. I mean, that goes absolutely against Christian doctrine. But hey, we have the Bible and the revival, so we know more than the average Christian. My brother, when he was younger, asked my mom once, like, what about all the other Christians? Are they all going to hell? And she was like, no, you'll be judged on what you know and what has been revealed to you. But once you've been at Kwasizabantu, the whole truth has been revealed to you. So when you then turn your back on that teaching, then you are turning your back on God, and then they have to shun you.
When did you start to see that this thing is a bullshit story?
3 years after I ran away.
And when did that happen?
I ran away at the age of 21.
So from the age of you
8,
were
9.
8 to 9, 24, how long is that?
It was around 13 years.
13 years. And what was that catalyst to make you see, hold on, this?
I was being sexually molested by my religious counselor that I had to confess sin to. And despite all my efforts to get it to stop, even Aquelle knew about it. Aquelle told me that I'm not allowed to have any contact with him. It was my fault for making him sin. How dare you make a man of God sin? And he forbade me to talk about it to my mother. But this man, Muzi, who is in jail for murder now, he didn't stop. So on the one hand, I had one man of God telling me I may not have anything to do with Muzi. On the other hand, I had Muzi, who is also a man of God. He kept calling me to come and see him. And I eventually just realized I can't live like that, so I ran away. But it took me 3 years to realize that what I had experienced and what I had witnessed was not God's will, but abuse. And it took me probably another 15 years before I thought that maybe I'm not going straight to hell.
I've got a passage from your book about the counseling appointments. Excuse me. I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. This guy, maybe that Elo guy is like, from down there is throwing up some snuff.
Nah, he's powerless. This is my ancestors saying it's okay, carry on. Yeah.
So this is from the chapter, The Threat of a Suitcase. And it gives an insight into the auditing or the counseling and the Muzi holds most of his counseling appointments, of course. I'm not the only confessant he sees. In a small office along that cold, dark corridor that I used to dread so much. It's got a bed and a desk and an extra chair or two. Here's how confession works. You arrive, he prays. You confess how many sins you've committed since the previous time you saw him and answer any questions he might have about these sins. He then prays for God's forgiveness and you're done, except we keep chatting. I have so many questions. I think Muzi quite likes having someone who hangs on to his every word. So
I learned a lot about South Africa from Muzi. I must say, he taught me what apartheid is and was. And he had a very good grasp of history and politics. And so I actually learned a lot from him. And I definitely hero worshipped him. And of course, that's fertile ground for any abuser. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go into the details because these are, it's not my place to delve into. After the assaults, these are assaults multiple. This is over a prolonged period of time. You decide, you've got nowhere to turn to. Your family are there. You decide, I'm going to run away. What was the plan? Where did you go to?
So even though I was 21 years old, I was still under my mother's authority until a daughter is married off. She has to remain obedient to her parents. And then once she's married off, she has to be obedient to her husband. Now, in spite of their best efforts, I wasn't yet married off, even though I'd had 3 proposals, turned down all 3.
Didn't pray hard enough. Come on.
No, I know.
No.
But I by this stage, I knew that I wasn't like them. I didn't have this peace they preached. I didn't have a personal relationship with God. God didn't speak to me the way that they said God spoke to them. So I knew that I was a misfit. And when Muzi again pushed me up against the wall and started kissing me and fondling me, I phoned my father's sister who lived in Pietermaritzburg, which is 120 kilometers away. And I said, Tannie Iris, can I come and visit? And she said, come, my child. So I persuaded my mother to allow me to visit my aunt for a weekend, because I had to get my mother's permission to get a lift out of the compound. And she gave me that permission. And I made sure that I only packed enough for a weekend. And when I got to my aunt, I said to her, I can't go back. And so on that Sunday, I sat next to her when she phoned my mother to tell my mother that I'm not coming back. So that was my escape. Other people have escaped in the night. They've managed to set up somebody who has also left to come to the perimeter fence, and then they've managed to escape that way, and other people leave quite openly. I knew that my mother would not allow me to leave if she knew that I wasn't coming back. So I had to lie to her in order to get out.
And your aunt was cool with this?
She gave me a home. She was amazing. Iris, I know, she's still looking out for me today. Yeah.
And that obviously set the cat amongst the pigeons. What is their response when somebody leaves the compound?
Well, I would still go back. My brother was in Durban at the time, and that night Iris called him, and he came to Pietermaritzburg, and he heard. I didn't tell them about Muzi. I just told him about some of the other things, and he supported me in not going back there. But he would still come and pick me up some weekends, and we would go and visit my mom. And I would still sometimes get a lift in on a Sunday to go and visit her and my sister, who by now had married. I mean, I just think of her husband.
She prayed harder than you, Erika.
It's somehow always the attractive, beautiful young woman who get asked to be married, who God wants to marry first. God wants to be married first. But and on one of these visits back, I got a message that Uncle Elo, at the time we called him Uncle Elo. Now I just call him Elo. I mean, he's not my fucking uncle. I would call him worse names if but you can't keep calling someone that to us. You have to at some point just call him Elo. So
you have to be specific about
which to us, yeah. So I heard that he wanted me to come and see him. And I went, and he said, so I hear you've taken a job. I got a job as a receptionist. So I hear that you've gotten a job, is this God's will for your life? Is this God's will for your life? They all have this flat inflection unless they're screaming at you from the pulpit, or what would transpire in this conversation. And I very bravely looked at him and I said, Uncle Elo, I didn't consult God on this decision. Boy, did he go off at me. He tore me a new one after everything they'd done for me, and I'm so ungrateful, and I'm walking away from God, I'm turning my back on God. And then he said 3 things to me. He said, you will never be happy. Your future husband will sleep around with other women, because that's, of course, the worst thing that can happen to a woman. And the 3rd thing he said is God's curse is now on your life. And I believed that for a long time. that God's curse was on my life, and that Elo actually had the authority to place God's curse on my life. And now, of course, I wish that 53-year-old me could sit across from him and go, shut up, you wanker. What do you know? You know nothing. Yeah. All you know is how to control people. So that's my escape.
And your story isn't unique. That's the thing. If you were the only child in this, as you speak, if your account, it leads me to say the word cult, as you weren't the only person in this cult to experience that kind of abuse.
No.
So it is endemic in the way they've organized their society and the way that they've structured their endeavors.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the other hallmark of a cult is that you're not allowed to question authority, right? So you're allowed to perhaps, you see, they don't even have Bible studies at Kwasizabantu. Now, you'd think that a mission station would encourage discussion of the Bible among its adherents, right? And that's why just about every church I know have groups where people gather in their homes and they have Bible studies. And this is perhaps with or without the pastor, but the pastor isn't the main guy standing on the pulpit interpreting God's word. This is everybody interrogating God's word for themselves. Right? That's not allowed at Kwasizabantu. Your interpretation of the Bible comes from the pulpit. You are not allowed to interpret it in any other way. And maybe you can question things with your counselor, but you certainly can't do it in a public space. And you certainly cannot question the leadership for their actions.
What happens if you impugn the leadership, or if you insult Erlo?
You'll probably get thrown out.
Expelled.
Yeah, expelled.
And then, of course, like the thing about these cults, let's call them cults. I'm convinced it's a cult. I'm convinced it's a cult. If these guys say, like, listen, we have a story to tell you, like, they obviously welcome to come here, or, to engage with that, write a reply and stuff. But that's for another day.
They might just do that, bless their cotton socks. In the beginning, like in 2020, they knew very little about social media. And then they appointed a powerhouse PR woman who helped guide them. But they would find the phone number of someone who had engaged with me on Twitter, and they would actually phone that person and say, we see that you're communicating with Erika. You shouldn't believe everything she says. Why don't you come and visit us? Come see for yourself, and we'll even let you meet Erika's mother and her sister and her nieces, and you can see for yourself. So they did this to a number of people, and of course these people, many of them would then phone me and go, Erika, what the fuck? We just had this call. Firstly, where did they get my number? And secondly, the thing is, in South Africa, you're allowed to record phone conversations that you're a part of.
I didn't know
without necessarily telling the other person.
That's life-changing for me. Oh.
So what Kwasizabantu doesn't know is that we actually have recordings of some of these conversations, of them trying to. And then they did the same with, they claim to be victims. As far as I know, there isn't a single media outlet in this country who has refused them the right to reply. The fact that they bungle it so badly is on them. It's not on the media. It's on them. Yeah.
But coming back to the thing, what happens if I say, Erlo is this, Erlo is that? Is there a special kind of category for the punishment that if you basically impugn the founder?
I don't know, because when I was there, I would never have heard anyone do that.
So how do they? What is the? I'm trying to see if it fits all the hallmarks of a cult, right? So part of the one of the hallmarks is at least like the leader of the cult is like has a special place closer to God, closer to the truth, cannot be questioned, and also leadership. That top structure has
completely.
And that you'd say that's characteristic of Kwasizabantu.
Absolutely, and nobody who has lived there and left will tell you that. That is not the case. The only people who will tell you that they didn't regard Erlo as some kind of a god are the people who are still there. Those are the only people who will tell you. The hundreds, the thousands of us who have left will tell you that Erlo was a godlike figure and that the now de facto leader who has taken his place, Lydia Dube, she is now, or she has been for a long time, she has been regarded as this otherworldly being, you know. But she actually claims that she died when she was a young woman and Erlo raised her up from the dead. So when Erlo died, I thought it was a pity that she couldn't return the favor.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I mean, like,
girl
hello,
Lazarus,
you know. Like, he raised you from the dead. Now, why are you letting him die? That's felt a bit ungrateful to me.
It's funny
Well, I'm doing this very deliberately because they listen and read everything I say and write. So I know this is just going to piss them off extra. Me making jokes about them.
They're like an obsessive obsession with response management and monitoring, like former cult members.
You may not question authority.
Are they litigious? Because that is another hallmark of a cult. Like they're having to sue and suppress.
They say they are. So in 2020, they said, we are going to bring the full force of the law on these people who are accusing us. And Lydia, in her personal capacity,
the new leader,
in her personal capacity, and Eunice, one of her sidekicks, have sued two men, Piet Botha and Chris Greef, for crimen injuria, for basically defamation, but in her personal capacity, right? Mm-hmm. And that was, probably about 3 years ago. Mm. Now, these two guys and their lawyers have done absolutely everything required by the court. Mm. They have fulfilled the due process. They have filed their affidavits. They have filed their papers. They have done everything. Kwasizabantu and its lawyer, by the way, was recently selected as a member of the Legal Representative Council. Like, yay, South Africa, we have a cult member keeping us safe. But anyway, he has failed to do the requisite things in this court case. So that's what's known as a slap lawsuit. So those are the only two lawsuits that Kwasizabantu has brought in since September 2020, when News 24 launched their expose, right? I have personally called them child abusers. I have called them protectors of pedophiles. I know of 3 pedophiles they protected, and those are just the ones that I know of. I have called them liars. I have called them abusers. If I am not speaking the truth, then I am defaming them on a weekly basis, right? Mm. Where is my lawsuit? Why have they not taken me to court? Could it be that they are worried about the hundreds of people I could call to come and testify that I speak the truth?
There's this thing called discovery, as soon as they sue.
I know. And they have millions. Not only Aquelle, they export avocados to the EU. They make millions from that every year. Bonlay Dairy is theirs. They provide fresh produce to Woolworths, Pick n Pay, Spar. I mean, whichever place doesn't stock their water, stocks their fresh produce or their dairy produce. So they have the money to take me to court. And they know that I don't have the money to defend myself. So where is my lawsuit? Why are they so chicken shit? They'll malign me online. They'll malign me on YouTube. They'll malign me in their publications. They'll malign me every chance they get. But they won't take me to court. Does that make sense?
No
to
sense.
Anybody?
So I've seen some of their communiques and videos that comes from the mission. And I saw a very interesting one the other day. Now, your family are still there. Your mother is still there.
My
right?
sister.
Your sister and your mother is still there. Your father has passed away. There's a very beautiful plate slide for your father and a tribute to him in this book. Published by Penguin Books, Mission of Malice by Erika Bornman.
And it's on sale everywhere because it's already 3 years old.
It's on sale everywhere. But I saw this like bizarre video from your mother, which did nothing to dissuade me that this is not a cult. And I'm hoping we could let's play that, and if we can. This is the first time you seeing this. Well, okay, let me say, why is this the first time you seeing this of your mother talking shit about you?
Because she does this, and she's been doing this since 2020, since before the Exodus expose. Because News 24 obviously sent them a list of our very specific allegations. So a few days before the expose launched, my mother got up on the pulpit, one of the few times that a woman is allowed on the pulpit, to tell the congregants about this youngest daughter of hers who is such a liar, that every word I speak is a lie. So she's been doing this. And bless their hearts. They I don't know, I think the PR person, and I know who she is, but I don't want to mention her name because I'm hoping she came to her senses because she's no longer their PR person. So I don't know which PR company they are paying to give them advice, but yeah. So I get sent these links of either a publication where my mother speaks against me or about me, or a video link. And I'm grateful when people do that, but it's hard for me to listen to. So this particular link I sent to two good friends, and I asked them, please watch this on my behalf and just give me a précis. Because there's something about a mother's voice. Doesn't matter how many years you haven't heard it. But anyway, let's do this.
I'm so sorry. But what I want people to note also is that look at what they put in the foreground of the thing. It's a marketing opportunity for Aquelle.
Water. Always. It doesn't matter what platform they're on. They will always make sure they have that dastardly water. And I actually want to challenge them to give us a list that contains even one name of an employee that has been allowed to join a union. Like, please Aquelle and Mseni Farming, like, you fuckers. Like, why are your employees not allowed to join unions? And why are the unions not taking this on? We are allowing this huge multi-million rand organization who says they're a church, and they fly around in private planes, and they are paying their workers minimum wage. Finally, they're paying the minimum wage, and that's only because of the expose, broad scrutiny on their accounting practices. And why are we letting them get away with this? But anyway, back to this video.
Let's do it. We can pause at any stage and comment on it.
Let's do it.
Are you willing to share with us the moment you realized that your own daughter was part of the attack on the very place that you call home? And yes, what went through your mind?
I don't know if you've ever looked at a house that needs to be demolished and then they put dynamite all over. It is first the windows that cracks and then that collapse. I can almost say that it was a reaction like that inside of me. That I was totally devastated. It was as if I could not understand how a child that grew up in our home and was taught respect, how that could go so far that she could speak in a way like that about our Reverend Deacon.
Pause it there.
You see-
Pause it for me. There for me. Yeah, how you could speak about like the Reverend Stig and like this cult leader.
So the problem is with policing my language and my tone, not with what I say. The problem is that I'm speaking against Elo Stegen, who was a racist and an abuser and an enabler of abuse and a protector of sexual predators and pedophiles. And maybe his estate will sue me.
And at this
that's
stage,
the
it's
problem.
well known. The allegations are well known. You
I'm not the
ventilated
only
them.
one. And I'm not the only one. There have been so many of us who've come forward. But I would like to know, when did those windows shatter? Was it in 1996 when I first spoke out against them? Was it in 2000 when I published an article that told the world about them? Was it in the subsequent years when every now and again somebody would ask me about it? Or was it in 2020? Like, these allegations of mine are not news to her. They are not, so I don't know when that shattering destructive moment actually happened. But if I can just remind you that there is very little remorse shown here, that what could we have done to make a daughter say these things? It's about what happened to her. How did she turn into this? Well, my mom had this favorite word to describe me as bitter. I think she hates it that that's the very last thing I am, even though I have every reason to be bitter. But the objection is about the way that I speak about Elo. And that was the day that she told me that I am not her daughter. She told both my brother and I. And it was because we had taken her on. She was not happy with the way we were living our lives. And we raised an issue about one of these leaders and what they had done that we knew about. And she said, "How dare you speak about a man of God like that?" And she said, "If you do not accept Elo Stegen as your spiritual leader, then you are not my children." And I said to her, "I do not accept him as my spiritual leader." And she said to me, "Then you are not my child."
How old were you?
This was in I would have been around 23, 24.
After.
After. So I was still trying to repair our relationship, you know. You are not my daughter. But anyway, and that was because of us taking on an abusive action by a leader. But anyway.
Can we take it back 5 seconds and then continue? Oh no, just a note, like the lady who's interviewing your mother.
Oh, she's wearing jewelry. No,
she's wearing jewelry because I'm noticing she's wearing jewelry
and makeup.
And that low cut sort
you
of thing.
can see her boobs. Yeah, no, she's definitely not a full-on member. She's probably being paid. She's probably one of these concerned Christians, and the only concerned Christians about this place are people that's on their payroll. I can tell you that.
That's a punishment-worthy offense, right? What she's wearing.
Definitely.
For me, it was not me. She could have said anything about me. But people that are honored and by God honored like that. That was above me. And I had to ask the Lord to have mercy on me, because I thought I'll die. I'll just disappear, I'll just die. How can one carry such shame? Because it's a shameful thing that she did. To break down the character of a person that has done her no harm and has done nobody any harm. I just couldn't fathom it. It was for me too much. And if I didn't know the Lord Jesus Christ, I think you would have visited my grave. I would not have been able to live through this shame. And I could have just crawled underneath the bed and stayed there and not see any of the dear people that were so pulled together, so attacked. Because that is not something a person, I can still not understand it. Because I trained, I brought my child up. I don't know where this comes from. I cannot understand this.
So it kind.
Yeah. And that's the first time you heard about in this clip your mother's shame. And your actions are
Shameful.
your mother's shame.
But you know what? This is not news. This is not new. And it's also not just me. People who speak up about abuse by powerful institutions, by powerful men, think of how often we are shamed. The shame is theirs. The shame is not mine. That's something I realized in therapy. It was an extremely powerful realization because I walked around with that shame for the longest time. And I remember it was around, I don't know, it was before 2010, but close to the end of that decade, that I said to my therapist, I don't know what to do because people keep saying to me, but she's your mother. You have to give her every chance. You have to give her endless chances. You know, she's your mother. And my therapist said to me, okay, if your mother had put you in hospital with a broken jaw or cigarette burns on your arms, would your friends be encouraging you to try and repair that relationship? And that set me free. My life, and you know what? So yes, I spoke up about it again in 2020. And yes, I have brought all the scrutiny back onto my life. I have brought all this back into my life. When people say to me, can't you just get over it? Can't you just like move on? I would love to. And if it had only happened to me, I absolutely would. Why would I want to keep rehashing this? Why? It does me no good. Like, I have created a beautiful life for myself in Cape Town. I have the most amazing friends. The reason I keep doing this and I keep appealing to people is because there are still children being raised at that place. They are still raising children. And it seems like nobody cares. Like, I feel for the people who have escaped. And we talk and we are helping one another heal. My main concern has always been, and the reason I put myself in the spotlight, and it's not fun to be in the spotlight for abuse, for all the things that I place myself in the spotlight, and I acknowledge that. So yes, I brought this on myself, that my mother goes on YouTube to decry me as a liar, right? I brought this on myself. And why? Because I care about the children who are being raised there, because they believe you have to break the spirit of a child by the age of 3. They say they no longer beat children. I believe that they no longer beat children in public. You will never convince me that they are not beating children there. You will never convince me. I know them. I know who they are. I know who they are. And they are abusers. And yes, take me to court. I would love to prove this in court.
This is a very powerful organization.
Hugely powerful.
And then in 2020, News 24 publishes an investigative piece called Exodus. And that, together with this book and your willingness to go on the public platform, as you said, to make yourself a target in a way. But you're not alone. That sort of creates the sea change. And it then involves a Chapter 9 institution of South Africa to investigate all of these claims. The CRL Commission, or that's shorthand for and I had to write this down.
No, it's a mouthful.
The Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities. Right? That's basically. They investigate these claims that not only you, but other people are making, that's being backed up by an investigative journalistic piece in News 24. What happens then at the CRL Commission?
So Professor David Mosoma, who was the then chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, went on TV to say that nobody needs to ask them to start an investigation, although I believe they have had letters in the past before this date, but that they are going to launch an investigation. Now, we wanted to approach the Human Rights Commission and the Department of Labor, the Department of Education, like even though none of us, or very few of us, have any kind of money, like to take legal action, we wanted to appeal to these various bodies to please investigate this place, right? It's not that nobody has tried over the years, but there's a serious lack of political will in this country.
And it's a powerful, connected
and
organization.
It's a powerful
has
organization.
been politically connected from the days of apartheid all the way through now. So
Jacob Zuma's mother was a regular visitor, by the way.
Maybe she liked the water.
Anyway, they are powerfully connected, and you'll regularly, even today, see the Premier of KZN, whoever is in that position, go and kowtow and preach and stand on the pulpit and say this place is an example to all of South Africa. And they do that. The now Deputy Minister Zihle Zikalala did it when he was the Premier, and the latest Premier of KZN is still praising them to high heaven. So when the CRL Rights Commission came out and said, we are launching an investigation, I, for one, and I know many of my fellow survivors, thought, finally. And so they followed a series of public hearings where the victims told of what happened to them at this place. And many of them cried. And then there were some sessions held in camera where the victim didn't want to be identified. And I know from at least two of them that the proceedings kept having to be stopped because they were sobbing so much. So these were highly emotional. And the media, all of South African media was reporting on these very public hearings. So we aired our pain in the hopes that it would bring about change and bring about some justice. Then they went quiet for a long time.
The commission
went quiet for a long time. And eventually, by the time they got round to me, which was March 2022, so they started the investigation with much fanfare in October 2020. And by the time they interviewed me and two of the other main whistleblowers, both doctors, Dr. Koos Greef and Dr. Daniel Schrikker, it was March 2023, right? And I could immediately tell that their tone had completely shifted. They were not as empathetic towards me as they were to the first victims. I had, by this stage, they had taken so long that I had written and published a whole book with Penguin Random House. And the commission refused to read it. They said it would make them look biased. And I was like, okay. That was March 2023. By January 2024, we were like, where's the report? But we'd been asking all along, where's the report? So one of the evangelical leaders in South Africa that I have an enormous amount of respect for, and I don't have a lot of respect for a lot of church leaders, but is Bishop Martin Frischer. Now, he has, since the 1970s, been trying to get Elo and his cohorts to change problematic practices. And he comes at it from definitely a human rights perspective, but also from a doctrinal perspective. Now, I can't speak on their doctrine because I honestly almost couldn't care less or what the Bible says and what they say, and how the two differ, because I don't care about people's words. I care about their actions. But Bishop Frischer comes with that lens and that attempt to interrogate and show them where they are leaving the Christian road, basically. I'm using my own language. And they've rebuffed him at every turn. And the CRL asked him to come and speak to them. So he was also a witness at the CRL Rights Commission. And him and then myself and 3 other plaintiffs, we got pro bono legal representation, who then filed a mandamus application. And a mandamus application is basically ordering a constitutional body to do their work. Right. So we wanted the court to say to the CRL,
complete this report.
Bring out your report.
Right.
And but we'd obviously warned them that we're going to do this. And so they brought out a draft report. Now get this. The organization investigating Kwasizabantu sent Kwasizabantu their draft report for comment.
Right. So it almost prepares them for what's coming down the pipe, and they can make interventions. Was the same courtesy afforded to the victims?
Not all of them. The only other person who got, as far as I know, who got the report was our legal representative. So the 5 of us then also saw this draft report, and across every page were these big confidential letters, watermarked on these pages. What we saw astonished us, because we found that someone in the office of the Premier in 2020 already said that these guys have, what were his words? An arsenal of legal and financial resources, which the victims don't have. He said that there should be a body of inquiry into, his words, the Iranian style type of self-governing territory that this is. And he made a number of recommendations. There had also been MECs from these various departments that we had wanted to get involved, who had gone, and they had given a report on what they found, and it wasn't very favorable, right? But now us as victims had never seen these 2 reports. And so the first time we saw them was in this draft report of the CRL Rights Commission. The rest of the report was heavily biased towards Kwasizabantu, but these 2 pieces of these 2 reports at least said something, not one survivor was quoted in the draft report. And so the CRL then said, well, can we please have your comments? And our feeling is that they want us to do their work for them. And secondly, if we highlight all the problematic areas, which were in multiple places on every single page, we will be giving them the tools to mask what it is that they actually want to say. And we decided, the 5 of us, that we weren't going to comment on this draft report, and we said we're withholding our comments until we get the final report. Because we could see the lay of the land. This was clearly not survivor-focused, victim-focused. I mean, they also had pages and pages and pages of justifying why Kwasizabantu's statement of faith fulfills the requirements under the protection of religion and religious beliefs, Now, I have no problem with what Kwasizabantu says. I have a problem with what they do, and all these witnesses. And we had gathered more than 70 people who couldn't or didn't want their names known, had answered detailed questions about the abuse they experienced with dates, names, because Kwasizabantu is saying this all happened far in the past. We stopped beating children long ago, and these accounts were directly refuting that. And
why don't you just get over it? Come on.
And I wanted to give these accounts to the CRL Rights Commission, but I wanted assurances that their names would not be passed on to Kwasizabantu. But I knew we had to give their names to the CRL Rights Commission so that their accounts could be verified. But I was very clear to protect their identities. I wanted the CRL to give me written assurance that they would not pass their names to Kwasizabantu. Right? CRL Rights Commission, I can show you the emails, the messages that I tried to get the CRL just to respond to me and please give me guidance. They would not. They would not. So they never looked at those more than 70 testimonies that we had collected. And most of them had been children at Kwasizabantu. So, but guess what? Then the final report comes out.
The final report
The final report is now at a huge fanfare. None of us victims were informed. I think I got note of the press conference about 5 minutes before it happened. And there's the CRL Rights Commission speaking to reporters, including from Radio Kwezi, which is the radio station that is Kwasizabantu's mouthpiece. And there are all the commissioners sitting, and in front of each and every single one of them is a bottle of Aquelle water. They released the final report.
Well,
one of the
in the interest of symmetry.
Yeah. So now we have to listen to this body who claimed to investigate Kwasizabantu, drink their fucking water while we're listening to them saying that these people really aren't that bad. And then they made a recommendation that, the Kwasizabantu should apologize to the people they hurt. But they don't specify what was that hurt.
Should apologize? They were ordered to apologize.
No, they should apologize. They should apologize. That apology has never come forth, and the CRL has done nothing. Now, the CRL as a body has the authority and the power to say, this incident must be investigated by the police. This incident must be investigated by XYZ. They just gave a blanket thing of, if any child there is being abused, they really should go to the police. How does a child trapped in a cult go to the police? Firstly, they don't think they're being abused. They think this is God's will. They don't know they're being abused. And secondly, how are they going to get to a police station? I've heard very scary things about Kwasizabantu's relationship with the Kroonskap police over the years. I don't know what that relationship is currently, but I certainly would not go to the Kroonskap police station to report anything negative about Kwasizabantu. So where are these children meant to go? They're children. So the CRL rights report was, and guess what was missing? The letter from the Premier's office and the MEC's reports.
These are documents that sort of would validate what you were saying.
They're missing from the report.
And besides the victim statements, right?
And so?
So I just want to ask, what is your feeling about how this, you would say it would be a whitewashed report. How did this reach an official standing? How would they?
Well, they're a Chapter 9 institution.
And what they say
is that they've obviously done an extensive investigation. This is a Chapter 9 institution. I mean, we trust them, right? Mm. And so this emboldened Kwasizabantu to now say, look, there's no substance. There's no substance.
Exonerated completely, officially.
We've been
by
exonerated
Chapter 9
by a
institution.
Chapter 9 institution. We've been exonerated. We are not a cult. We haven't, these people want to take over our business. And that's why Erika and the others are doing this. They want to take over our very lucrative businesses, right? Mm. So now, they said that a while back. In fact, one of the first press releases they released was, in all caps, Aquelle, the real victim, right? So the five of us, with the help of our pro bono legal team, who consists mainly of a retired judge, God bless his soul, launched a review application in the Johannesburg High Court.
So a review application is to set aside this report.
Yes.
Right? Ultimately, the commissioner of the CRL Commission, this thing goes out in their name. This is their ultimate responsibility.
Yes.
Now there's a new commissioner. Mm. And there was a new commissioner only after the review application was launched. Am I correct?
Appointed in January this year.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So in August 2023, we launched a review application, an urgent application. The CRL had X number of days to respond. They ignored it completely. Then they had X number of days to file their papers. They ignored that completely. So when we went to court, it was on the unopposed roll, right? And I think on the day or the day before, they suddenly popped up and said, "No, we're opposing this." But they had done nothing of the court of what the process requires by law. I mean, this is a Chapter 9 institution that's thumbing its nose at our country's law. Eventually, we had to get a court order to order them to submit the documents to us in discovery, right? Like to submit we had to get a court order. And the court actually said that if they don't, by this date, the sheriff of the court may go and collect all the documents. Now, the papers made us quite happy because they didn't say that if the CRL don't submit the papers, they can go to the CRL office. It just said they can go wherever they need to go to get. So we were like, that includes Kwasizabantu. Anyway, they submitted the papers. The legal team says that they were in awful disarray. There were even things there that didn't pertain to our case, which is a flagrant, like disgusting in terms of confidentiality. And they were messed up. They were duplicates, wada. And eventually, the CEO of the CRL Rights Commission filed an affidavit to the court in this review application, and he admitted something very interesting, which was that the CRL's own legal team advised them before they embarked on the first hearing that this was slightly out of their mandate. They didn't really have a mandate to investigate all these like abuses, right? And then they were further advised that they wouldn't be able to make any findings that Kwasizabantu didn't admit to.
Right.
Okay. So the CRL Rights Commission in October 2020 or November 2020, because we don't have the minutes of that meeting, even though they should be in the papers, the court-ordered papers, but they're not. But anyway, let's go on the signed affidavit. They knew that this would be a dud report if they even released a report.
Yes.
And they went ahead regardless. And so now we are suing Professor David Mosoma and the CRL Rights Commission for damages because they willfully put us through all that trauma. They knew we were going to be traumatized. They promised us pastoral help in terms of, I think they were going to give us social workers to speak to. That never happened. And they willy-nilly went through this whole process. In our review application, we have already laid out to the court how they didn't even follow proper procedure in their investigation. But now in our damages, we're saying not only did they not follow proper protocol, and the way they trampled our rights and our dignity underfoot was disgusting. So there's 8 of us so far, but it's open for other people who testified to join us. So I'm hoping the other people who testified who also were so unbelievably traumatized. I cannot tell you, Roscoe, I'm amazed that I have fluids left in my body. Maybe that's because I drink so much wine. But the amount of tears that I have shed in the past 4 years over other people's stories, not even my own. So we're suing them. We're suing them for damages, and we filed those papers in the past 2 weeks. The new chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, I believe her to be a woman of integrity. Unfortunately, she has to now help clean up the mess that her predecessors made. And that is unfortunately the case. But we very much wanted this to be a matter of public record, because one of the things that Professor Mosoma said in an affidavit, he said that the 5 of us, and that includes me, have unclean hands, that we are suing the CRL for personal profit, that our lawsuit would open the floodgates of frivolous lawsuits against Chapter 9 institutions, and that we were we were basically operating in bad faith. We were doing this in bad faith. This is in an affidavit. The chairperson of a Chapter 9 institution said that I had unclean hands.
Sounds like self-interest.
And I was acting in bad faith.
He's
right?
issued this report, which is compromised in his name.
But now, doesn't that echo what Kwasizabantu does and what you saw on the video with my mother? You are not allowed to take us on because we are in power.
It does.
Chapter 9 institutions should be sued when they don't do their jobs. When they miss, we also sent a complaint to Scopa because they knew what the nature of their investigation would have to be, and therefore it was a misappropriation of public funds. They should never have conducted this investigation. So they not only traumatized us, but they also misspent money. I mean,
what did the commission
really
cost? Like more or less?
I have no idea. And I would love every commissioner who was in charge during the Kwasizabantu case to actually have a lifestyle audit. I would love to see that. I don't know whether that will ever happen.
Opening up a can of worms in the whole can of worms factory there.
Well, they need to be investigated. And an audit needs to be done of how many investigations have they started over the years? How many traumatizing testimonies have they heard? And how many reports on these churches have they ever published? Bishop Zondo took the CRL Rights Commission to court. The court ruled that they can continue with their investigation. I don't know about you, but I've never seen a report.
I haven't seen it.
I don't know. So they issue statements and things on circumcision and other cultural practices, right? But the actual churches that they investigate for abuse, I think we only have the Kwasizabantu report because we filed. We wanted the court to compel them to do it. And I don't think the other witnesses of these abusive churches that the CRL Rights has been investigating, I don't think that they have the luck, and it's pure luck, that we have this amazing legal team who are acting pro bono for us. They don't have that luck. So that's why we wanted our damages claim to be a matter of public record so that there can be scrutiny on how this body operates, how they conduct their investigations. And if the legal team said they didn't have the mandate, then what is their mandate? Like, why do they exist? And that's why we've done what we've done.
Sure, Erika. Nantel, I don't know. We're not gonna get sued apparently, but they're gonna know our phone numbers. Those guys.
Sure, Sarah.
You just have to drop a few curse words and then they'll put the phone down because that puts them in touch with Satan.
But I want to talk to them actually. You know, like I have a very firm view about this now.
Listen, if they invite you to visit them, insist that they come and fetch you with one of their private planes.
They have private planes.
They have private planes. I tell you, those leaders live a life of luxury.
I'll fly. I'll even take it. I'm not going to pay for my own things there. They must pay to see me there. But like the thing is, I have a view, and they're welcome to come here, and we can talk about all these things. They have a right.
They
to
won't come
power,
here. They'll want you to go there.
That's fine. I can talk to that lady with all the jewelry.
With the earrings.
Yes.
Yes. Let her talk to a real journalist for a change.
I'm not a real journalist.
I know, but you're more real than they are.
Apparently. So I just want to leave it like this because you signed this book for me and you said, "Dear Roscoe, when in doubt, be brave."
That's my life motto.
And thank you for bravely allowing me to walk this very painful part of your journey through this in such a public way. I really appreciate it. And I'm with you, my friend.
Thank you.
I guess I am biased now. I mean, that's at least a disclosure. I'm very biased. Erika Bornman is a good friend of mine, and I believe Erika.
It's very hard to listen to the witnesses and not believe us because we all we tell the same story with small differences, but it's the same story. I mean, I think in my book I say, they try to discredit me by saying I'm disgruntled, and then in my book I write how many disgruntled children can one cult spawn? It's lots.
So Erika, we can find you on social media, on Twitter and on
Instagram, but there it's more photos of my cats and sunsets. Although I do every now and again. Oh, and pro-Palestine rallies and things like that. But on Twitter is where I bait the bear.
Good. And just one more question. This, this thing about Trump and like Afrikaners coming to the States, did you file your papers already to go to?
I will not go.
Why not?
I'm not underprivileged. I'm not being discriminated against. There is no white genocide. White people are hugely privileged, and that is our failure. I spoke to some matriculants from Hanover Park, I think about 10 days ago, and I actually got tearful when I said to them that I apologize on behalf of my generation that we haven't done more to dismantle the long tentacles of apartheid. And white people are so privileged. Like it's a complete and utter fallacy, and I am very happy. I would love to see them in court. I do not support the MK, but if they want to file a court order to get this guy, a court case against them for treason, I support that 100%. It is treasonous, and it's based on such a fallacy. And then they're like these 141 racist laws, and then you look, and it actually, disabled white people and disabled women are included in the people that are being uplifted. Like, please, people, like, really, we think, and this isn't me, this was someone on Twitter who said that the reason some of these laws are on their list is because someone just did a search for the word diversity. So there's also one on encouraging plant diversity that's in there as a racist law, which is hilarious. I mean, they are... I come from Afrikaans stock. My home language was Afrikaans, and I've had to. It's an ongoing process to make peace with my ancestors because I despise what we've done, what they did, and I think I make fellow white people very uncomfortable because I call out whiteness.
You should see your Twitter feed.
Oh no, they hate me.
If you want to see white on white violence. Check out
white on white violence.
Feed.
Yes. Yeah. I should be able to apply for asylum, but definitely not America. We are not underprivileged. We are not being persecuted. We are not being discriminated against, and we are definitely not being genocided. And that's what I'll say there. But no, I'm not going to America anytime soon.
I'll see you at the Palestine gathering tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow at the Mandela Glasses. Yes.
Cool. Nantel, thanks for this. Thank you so much, Erika, and thank you for joining us. It's good to be back in this chair with my name on the title card, and there's some really, really cool people that I've got lined up to come on the show once every 2 weeks, so stick around, stick with me, it's going to be really cool. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you real soon.